Hello everyone, this is Iran Talk, and in this video I'd like to discuss the recent genetic calculations I have done. Now these calculations are very special because I personally feel that they're the most up-to-date and the strongest calculations I've done thus far, and the reason for that is that now I have been able to locate the source of the ancient Semitic admixture found in Iranians. So before it was broken down into Natufian and Bedouin admixtures, but now it's specifically located from the Levant, and these samples rather are from the Bronze Age Levant, and these samples are now used for the Semitic source, and this Semitic source can be considered native, as I think it predates the arrival of the Aryans to Iran, as it's even found in the Iron Age Iranian. And this Semitic source was likely from ancient Mesopotamians who moved into the plateau, and there may have been a lot of admixture early on between the native Iranian farmers of the plateau as well as the Mesopotamian natives who were Semites. And these Mesopotamian natives likely resembled this Levant Bronze Age sample, and this Levant Bronze Age sample can be considered a good proxy for very ancient Semitic admixture in Iranians, and it's composed of Neolithic Iranian as well as Bedouin related admixture and also a Natufian admixture, and these three admixtures are now a part of this Levant Bronze Age admixture, and it's from the south of the Levant, so it's from contemporary Israel and Lebanon, that area. And now I will get into the video. Also, the inclusion of this source has seen rather an increase of steppe admixture in Iranians, and this steppe admixture is obviously from the early Iranian, who was 62% Andronor derived and 38% Iranian farmer derived. So despite being significantly Andronor derived, it does have also a great deal of Neolithic Iranian farmer ancestry and Chalcolithic Iranian farmer ancestry, and this farmer ancestry comes to a total of 38%, which is quite significant. And this process of hybridization likely took place in the BMAC horizon, as this early Iranian sample has been proven to be around 46% to 48% BMAC derived and around 52 to 54% Andronor derived. And as you know, the early inhabitants of the BMAC culture were mostly Iranian farmers, but during the late BMAC period, just before the arrival of the Andronor pastoralists into the BMAC horizon, there was admixture between the population of the BMAC horizon as well as Yamnaya steppe pastoralists. So there were two migrations into the BMAC horizon, one from Yamnaya and a later one from the Andronor horizon. Now I will get into these calculations. Now first up here are the Iranian from Fars, and usually the Fars Iranians are the first Iranians I take a look at because I feel that they best reflect the average Iranian. And these Fars, obviously these are Persians from the Fars province, and as you can and before I begin this, I just wanted to say that now I've included two other Chalcolithic Iranian sources. One is from the Sagabi site and the other one is from the Tepe Hisar site, and both of these are Chalcolithic sites within Iran, and these also impacted the steppe admixture. It increased because of this and the inclusion of the Levant Bronze Age. So essentially these Iranians from Fars are 36.8% from Haji Firuz, to 30.8% from Turkmenistan Iron Age, so the early Iranian, 10.6% from the Levant Bronze Age, and this can be considered native admixture because it actually predates the arrival of the Aryans to Iran. I think it's from the ancient hybridization between Mesopotamians and Iranians from the plateau, and then another 10.15% from Sagabi Chalcolithic, which is also in Iran, 5.6% from the heavily Neolithic Iranian Sahri Sokta site, 2.75% Mongolian, 2.2% from the other Sahri Sokta site, and 1.1% from Bumij. So if you consider 3% Mongolian and 1% Bumij, it comes up to around 4% admixture, foreign admixture, and 96% continuity. And I believe that this is the case. I think most of the Semitic admixture in Iranians is ancient, and this recent calculation proves this, that the majority of the, if not all of it, for the Fars Iranian, all of it is ancient. As you can clearly see, This calculation shows zero Bedouin related admixture and proves that Iranians are not admixed with Arabs as well at all rather, and there's no doubting this because all the recent genetic evidence has proven this, and also historical evidence has proven this as well. There were not many Arab settlers in Iran, quite frankly, and at the time of the Arab invasions Iran, the plateau at least had around at the least rather, it had around 5 million people, and even if 50,000 to 100,000 Arabs settled in Iran, it would not have replaced the character of the Iranian population, as that would be just a mere 1%. And this proves that Arab admixture in Iran is very limited, and most of the settlements, as I previously covered in one of my previous videos titled The Truth About the Arab Occupation of Iran, was only between as you know, it was only between 50,000 to 100,000 people cumulatively in all of Iran, and most of the actual settlements took place in Iraq and Khorasan. And also the final word here is that most of the settlers in the Iranian heartland were actually killed off, and the likely population of Iran at the time was around 8 million people, and therefore this small set of Arab settlers could not have replaced the entire Iranian population or even have had an impact on the Iranian population. And the Arabs were also very segregated, and this is another reason why they could not have had an impact on the Iranian population. The next population that I will be taking a look at here are the Iranian Zoroastrians. Now their results prove that this Semitic admixture is not recent, but it's ancient. It's from the Mesopotamian admixture in the pre-Aryan population of Iran, and you can clearly see here that 39.5% of the Zoroastrian admixture is from the Haji Firuz cluster, 35% is from the early Iranian, 12.8% is from the ancient Mesopotamian, 9.05 and 3.05% are from the Neolithic Iran Havi Shakhri Sokhta cluster, 0.35% is from Bumij, and 0.25% is from Mongolian, and then there's 0 Bedouin, 0 Mabudi related admixture, 0 from Sagabi and Tepe Hisar, and all of this proves that the Zoroastrians actually have 99% genetic continuity, and this is obvious. The Zoroastrians have not mixed with anyone since the Arab invasion, and these recent results confirm this. But yeah, these Zoroastrian results prove that the Semitic admixture in Iranians is ancient, and this Semitic admixture also has minor Neolithic Iranian related admixture as well, probably around 5-6%, but nonetheless these results clearly show that the Zoroastrians have no recent Arabian or Arab related admixture. Now the next population I am going to be taking a look at here are the Iranian Lords, and the Lord results showed exactly the same thing. A lot of genetic continuity, 47.95% from the Haji Firuz Chalcolithic site, 22.55% from the early Iranian, 10.20% from this Mesopotamian Semite source, 9.95% from Sagabi Chalcolithic, 5.2% from the heavily Neolithic Iranian Shahri Sokhta site, 2.2% from Mongolian, and another 1.85% from Shahri Sokhta. So again, this shows a great deal. This shows around 98% genetic continuity in the Lurs, including the ancient Mesopotamian, and again, no Bedouin shows up. This again, in my opinion, is ancient Mesopotamian source, and I think after conversing with Davitsky, we did reach this conclusion that it is ancient Mesopotamian source, and it's not a recent Arab related source. If it was, it would show up in the Bedouin. So again, now the Lurs have around 98% genetic continuity, and this comes at no surprise, as the Lurs are very isolated and they have not really admixed with anyone. They're very tribalist, and they are like the early Aryan populations which moved into Iran, which were also very tribalist, and this is a perfect showcase of the genetic continuity in the people of Iran. Now next up are the Iranian Mazandaranis. Now before I continue on with the Mazandaranis, I just wanted to say that most of you are wondering why the calculations keep changing. Well, it's because we don't have all approximate estimates for these ancient Iranian population, as we need Achaemenid and Sassanid era samples. So I have been experimenting with the most up-to-date genetic information, and now I've made a breakthrough, and that's why the results are different. But anyways, now I will get on to the Mazandaranis. But final thing I want to say here is that these results are not significantly different. All of these results paint the same picture, and that is 90 to 95% genetic continuity in Iran since the Iron Age, and these most recent results actually show greater than 95% genetic continuity in the majority of the Iranian populations. Now here are the calculations for the Iranian Mazandaranis, and it shows around 49.8% from the Haji Firuz site, 22.35% from the early Iranian, 11.35% from Tepe Hisar, 8.45% and 5.8% from the both Shahre Sokhta clusters, which are Neolithic Iranian, 1.1% from Sagabi, and 0.95% from Mongolian, and 0.2% from the Bedouin B. So these show minor Arab admixture, only 0.2%, but it shows zero ancient Semitic related admixture and only 0.95% Mongolian admixture, and this proves that the Mazandaranis have very little foreign admixture. They have around 98 to 99% genetic continuity, and this is obviously evident by their phenotypic appearance as well as their isolation in the mountains of Tabaristan. This is undoubted, and this is the reality here. They do have very limited Iran Iron Age admixture, which is quite surprising, as most people would expect them to have a great deal of early Iranian admixture, but nonetheless they only show around the 1% foreign admixture, and they have no ancient Semitic admixture, and this again is testament to their geography. The further away you go from Iran, the less ancient Semitic you get. The closer away to, the further away you get from Iraq in terms of Iranian geography, the less ancient Semitic you have, and the closer to Iraq, the most ancient Semitic you have, the more ancient Semitic you have rather, and this makes perfect sense considering the geography and the history as well as the genetics of the region. Now next up I will be taking a look at the Azeris. Now in these redone calculations for the Azeris, you can clearly see that they have around 58.35% admixture from the Haji Firuz cluster, 27.35% from the early Iranian, 7.15% from the Mongolian, and 7.01% from the ancient Mesopotamian, and only 0.05% Boomage. And again you can see that they have a total of 93% genetic continuity, and this is obviously evident in the fact that the Azeris are from northwestern Iran, and there were very limited Arab settlements in the region. And also another thing to take into account here is that they do have ancient Mesopotamian admixture at around 7%, which makes sense, but overall they are fairly native. And another thing here is the Mongolian, it is at 7%. Now among the main Iranian populations, this is the highest, with the exception of course the Iranian Turkmen, but they are a Turkic peoples, and that's why, well, they're not a Turkic peoples, I consider them to be an Iranian peoples. Everyone should consider them to be an Iranian peoples, the Azeris, but they do have a Turkic linguistic background. That's why they have around 7.15% Mongolian admixture, because there was a great deal of migration of Turks into the region, but nonetheless they didn't leave much of an impact either. And it proves that these calculations proves that the genetic continuity in Iran since the Iron Age is 90 to 95%, and specifically referring to the Azeris, this is important because the ancient sample from northwestern Iran also is very similar to the Azeris as well as to the Kurds. Next up I will take a look at the Kurds. Now before I take a look at the Kurds, all I wanted to say is that I am not using a script, so if you feel that it's better for me to use a script, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you. Now looking at the Kurds, we see a very similar picture to the Azeris, and that is that they have a high degree of Haji Firuz admixture, and they have around 28.4% early Iranian, 48.2% Haji Firuz, 11% Levant Bronze Age South, 10.7% from Sagabi, and only 1.3% Mongolian, and 0.3% from the Shahri Sokhta cluster. So these actually have a great deal of genetic continuity, around 99 to 100%, because if we compare these to the other Kurdish samples we have, not Kurdish but rather the Iron Age Iranian, which is from northwestern Iran and which was from a Mitanni site, we can see that they are very similar, and the Kurds of today actually have less ancient Mesopotamian than that sample, but it proves that the Kurds are mostly of median as well as Mitanni origins. The Kurds outside of Iran are likely mostly of Mitanni origins, whereas the Kurds within Iran are likely mostly of the Median origin, alongside the Azeris, who are also of Median origin. Now I will take a look at the Iron Age Kurdish sample. Oh, sorry, it's not a Kurdish sample. I meant this Iron Age Iranian is extremely similar to the modern day Kurdish sample. That's what I meant. Sorry about that. They were not Kurdish speakers. This individual was not a Kurdish speaker. He likely spoke the Hurrian language, and he was of Mitanni extraction rather. Now here we have the Iron Age Iranian, and this is from Tepe Hasanlu, which is in northwestern Iran, and it shows around 30.2% of this individual's ancestry is from Sagabi Chalcolithic, 28.5% is from Turkmenistan Iron Age, 25% is from Haji Firuz Chalcolithic, and 16.2% is from the ancient Mesopotamian source. So again, very similar to the Kurds and the Azeris, except it has no East Asian related admixture, and it has an uptick in the admixture from the ancient Mesopotamian source, and overall it has more Sagabi admixture than Haji Firuz, but those are all Chalcolithic Iranian populations. There's really not much of a difference. But again, now the Iron Age Iranian admixture, not the Iron Age, sorry, the early Iranian admixture in Iranians has significantly increased, and this is also great news, and this is also a great breakthrough. Next, I will take a look at the sample set of the Bandaris. Now the Bandaris are a very unique population, and I'll explain why in just a moment. Oh, sorry, now before I take a look at the Bandaris, I just wanted to talk about a very interesting population, and this is the only sample set which shows only around 84% genetic continuity and heavy Bedouin related admixture. These are the Iranian Persian Shi'is. Now these Persians are from a very different background. They have a very religious background and a very cosmopolitan background. I'm not saying all religious Persians are like this. These populations were taken from southwestern Iran as well as from central Iran around Qom, but nonetheless I don't think they paint an accurate picture. You know, there can be individuals within the sample set who skew them one way or another, and this is another thing to keep in mind here. These are small sample sets, but I think they do well represent the majority of the Iranian population. Now these individuals are a minority in Iran. They probably number no more than 500,000 people, but nonetheless these individuals show around 10.25% Bedouin admixture, 2.55 Bumij admixture, and 2.85 Mongolian admixture, for a total of 84% genetic continuity and 16% foreign admixture. But much of their admixture is native. They also have a great deal of early Iranian admixture. But these Persian Shi'is are likely those individuals, those religious individuals who converted to Islam and intermingled within the Arab population early on and retained that aspect within their genetics. And this population is probably best representative of Sayyids and those of a very religious and foreign background, but nonetheless they are not a majority, and also they're a very small minority. And another thing to keep in mind about these populations is that these individuals actually may not even be they may even be of recent Iraqi background, though that's likely. There was a migration of a great deal of Iraqi Persians from Iraq to Iran, and these could be from that sample set as well. But nonetheless, I think the likely theory here is that they're Sayyids, and that's why they have this very unique admixture. But I don't think that they're real. They may not even be the majority of Sayyids, but this is a very unique sample set. That's why they were labeled as Iranian Shi'is when they were taken. The location from which they were taken is not known, but I think they're the elites of Qom, and it shows that the elites may have been integrated into the Arab population, may have absorbed them. That's why Sayyids today have a different genetic makeup than the majority of the Iranian population. But nonetheless, this could also just be due to sampling errors. That's another thing to take into account here. I didn't really mention that, but it's another thing you should take into account here. But anyways, next up I'm going to be taking a look at the Bandaris. Now here are the Bandaris, and I personally think that they are descended from the Elamites, and the reason I say this is because I believe that the Elamites were an admixture of Neolithic Iranians and Chalcolithic Iranians because they were located in southwestern Iran. This was the last place that the Chalcolithic Iranian farmers entered, and there may have been some sort of hybridization between Neolithic Iranians and Chalcolithic Iranians, and this is evidenced here, as you can see that 28%. So the Bandiris have a great deal of early Iranian admixture as well, at around 28%, but they have 25.5% Chalcolithic Iranian admixture from the Sagabi cluster, and then they have another 15.25 and 11.8% admixture from the Shahri-Sokhta Neolithic Iranian clusters, and this proves that there was some sort of hybridization rather there between Neolithic Iranians and Chalcolithic Iranians, and this is probably from the Elamites. And then you have 12.75% Bedouin related admixture, and this is accurate. It's not likely that these Bandaris had any ancient Mesopotamian related admixture, but it doesn't show here, but it does show that they have a great deal of Arab admixture. Now what could be happening here is that they may have more Arab admixture than ancient Mesopotamian admixture. That's why there's a greater pull towards the Bedouin as opposed to the ancient Mesopotamian Levant Bronze Age sort. These calculations are very accurate, but there are some things that David still needs to fix in them, but nonetheless they have around 12.75% Bedouin related admixture, and then 5.25% South Asian related admixture, and 1.35% African admixture. So even they have around, I would say they have around 85% genetic continuity, and that's quite remarkable as well. But this is just the Bandari sampling, and this is just something interesting to take into account here about the Bandaris. And the Bandaris are actually a very isolated and very small population. Again, they are a minority in Iran, and they number no more than 3 million individuals in total. So that's a very small portion of the Iranian population, around 2 to 4%. Now the final population I'm actually going to take a look at another population after this one, but the next population I'm going to take a look at are the Baluchis, and the Baluchis are very unsurprising result. They have around 61 Neolithic Iranian admixture from the Shahri-Sokhta clusters, and this is what's unique about the Baluchis. They're very heavily Neolithic Iranian, and they show very little Chalcolithic and Neo-Iranian admixture. In this calculation, they have zero Chalcolithic Iranian related admixture. They're mostly just native Iranians, and they have native Iranian farmers, so Neolithic Iranians, not Chalcolithic Iranians, and they have around, so they are very archaic population, sorry about that, but anyways, they have around 23.85% early Iranian admixture, 6.5% Arab related admixture, which could be recent, 3.45% South Asian related admixture, and 3.35% ancient Mesopotamian related admixture, with another 1.45% Mongolian admixture, and 0.15 African admixture. And these are the Baluchis. These aren't the coastal Baluchis who are a bit more admixed with Africans. These are the Baluchis of Pakistan, and the Baluchis of Iran are likely very similar to them as well. So the Baluchis have a great deal of genetic continuity as well. You could consider it, as they have very limited South Asian and East Asian related admixture, which is quite surprising. But the Baluchis are mostly just Neolithic Iranians plus steppe, and that's their reality. Now the Jews, like their Iranian Arab brethren, both are Semitic people and both are brethren in my opinion. Like them, they have a great deal of Semitic related admixture. So this Iranian Jew has around 57.9% admixture from Haji Firuz Chalcolithic, and 27.1% admixture from Mesopotamian, from a Mesopotamian source, and another 15% from the early Iranian. And this shows that the Iranian Jews are not like other Iranian populations. They have around half as much as early Iranian admixture as the most Iranian populations, and much of their admixture is actually native Iranian and native Semitic related admixture. And this shows that the Iranian Jews are a very distinct population in comparison to other Iranian populations. But that's essentially it for this video. Thanks for watching, and in this video I covered most of the Iranian populations in depth, all of the tested populations rather, and most of the populations living in Iran today. Some of them have not yet been sampled, but if you have any questions, please ask in the comment section and I will get to them. But I probably won't be updating this calculation anytime soon. I think these are the most accurate calculations, and if you stayed to the end, thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe, and take care.